Welcome to the podcast, People More Interesting Than Me. I'm your host, Michael Strumsky, where every week I host a new guest with unique professions, personal adversity, or even maybe a strong opinion or two. And if you haven't hit the 5 stars review on Apple Podcasts, please hit it now before you forget. Running a podcast is a surprising amount of work, and more reviews converts into a wider range of future guests. Ladies and gentlemen, cycling enthusiasts, and creative minds, welcome to a pedal-powered episode of our podcast. Today we are thrilled to introduce you to Ben, a true visionary in the world of upcycled bicycle innovation. With a keen eye for transforming discarded bike parts into functional art, Ben has mastered the art of giving new life to old gears and frames. Join us as we ride through the story of his journey, from salvaging forgotten components to crafting eco-friendly masterpieces. Tune in to discover how Ben's passion for sustainability and cycling collide into a symphony of ingenuity and environmental consciousness. Enjoy. Yeah, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
So basically it should take, it really depends. Usually around like 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how much. And basically how you get started with obviously upcycling bike. And I love the Schwinger name, by the way.
Thanks.
That is Singer. I know obviously Schwinn is German. What is Singer? Is it US?
Well, they're both U.S. brands. Schwinn was probably the dominant bicycle brand in the United States for about 50 years, and Singer was as well, but they were also made all over the world, but they both started in the States.
Oh, man, I thought for the longest time, I thought Schwinn was German.
Oh, Schwinn definitely sounds German, but
Okay.
yeah, it was started, I think, in Chicago.
Okay.
Back
the Wright brothers.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. The Wright brothers started out with bicycles too.
You grew up in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Even though Pennsylvania is just like the chance of people knowing each other in Pennsylvania, I feel like is so slim. So my mom is originally from Williamsport, Pennsylvania.
Oh, no way.
And you're gonna tell me you're like, oh, I'm like 3 hours away.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I grew up near Lake Erie, and now I live near Harrisburg, and they're both like 3 hours away, so you nailed it.
Gotcha. So the two things I know about both of those, I know Erie is cold as sin. Like, if you ever want to die a nice cold death, you go to Erie.
It's a good place for that.
And then Harrisburg, I know, is like the waypoint between like a bunch of stuff, and they have a lot of good breweries, if I remember correctly.
Both. It is definitely the waypoint. It's in between Philly and Pittsburgh, which is why it's the state capital. So it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, but kind of close to a lot of stuff.
The Amish.
Yeah. We had Amish folks help with our house. We got a bunch around, and they're great, but they're all around, no doubt.
I think something recently I thought it's something you don't think about, but then when you think about it, it's kind of cute. It was like a photo of a Costco, and they had a section specifically for like buggies and horses for the Amish. Nice. And I thought that was hilarious because it's like something you don't even think about the Amish going to Costco, but like, why wouldn't they go to Costco? Because it's like a little Dutch market. Like, I love Amish Dutch markets. Yeah, exactly. To get into the nitty gritty, I saw the way I found you was I was on Instagram, and I saw, I guess you would call it like a chimera. It was a Singer sewing machine, but it was attached to a bicycle, specifically a Schwinn, right? Or was it a different kind? And you
got it.
And you were self-powering it, which recently I started sewing, and I know that like a lot of people don't. I've always been fascinated by sewing, so it just, I don't know, but people don't know that you can just like use your hand to sew like the whole time. And then seeing you do this, I was just like, that's so cool. That's like, like I've never seen this before. And like, how did you even like
Why
begin with
why
that
do
concept?
that? How
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, well, I'm a big fan of cycling. So I know that there's power that's produced from cycling. Usually we just use it out on the road to get from point A to point B and back. But I was just kind of fascinated with human power. My wife and I, we built our house and we're off grid, so we're just interested in the idea of alternative energies and mindsets. And so I was like, well, maybe I can pair a bike with a sewing machine, but there's precious little information about that on the internet. Like, in some hazy corner somewhere, somebody did it and they posted a really crappy YouTube video.
some Reddit
Um,
thread.
yeah, right. And I was like, I think it's theoretically possible, but I didn't have anything to go off of. So I got a junk bike and a bunch of junk 2x4s, and I made kind of my first one to see if the concept would work. And I didn't really pay any money for anything because I just wasn't sure if it'd work. And then somebody else actually came up with, well, dude, you should get like the All-American bicycle, which is a Schwinn, and you should get the All-American sewing machine, which is a Singer, and put them together, and you'll call it your Schwinger. And at first, I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. So I went about. I got a Schwinn exercise bike, which those are pretty money as like a little power unit because you don't have it. It just sits there on its own. You don't
Yeah.
have a bicycle that you have to worry about keeping up.
Does it have one of
Um,
those chain covers? That's what I'm imagining right now.
It did. I took it off because it didn't work the way that I wanted to get the power to go, but it did. It had an awesome one. It said Schwinn Exerciser, and I think I've put it up on my wall now. Now that's not on the bike.
That's nice. And does it have those like I think I had what did I have? I think I had a Schwinn Traveler in college and it had
Okay.
those what's it called? Those feet cages and I just had to take them off like
They can be kind of death traps.
yeah, oh yeah, especially when you're trying to do something and you just slam your toe into the cage and you're like, "Oh crap,
Oh no.
like I'm about
Yeah.
to eat asphalt right now."
Yeah. If you're like commuting and you need to get out of those real quick, sometimes it doesn't happen. Then you fall over and feel kind of
so
bad.
so is this just like a passion or was it a passion that turned into a profession? Like what did you do like while you were developing your
Uh,
prototype?
yeah. Well, I've done a lot of things. So I went to college, and right out of college, I joined the Peace Corps. And so I served in Zambia for 3 years. And then I came back and bounced around and wasn't really sure what I was doing. Kind of did a few things. I worked in a bike shop for a little bit. I worked at a kids camp in Hawaii, met my wife, and then we decided to do Peace Corps again. So we did it for 2 years in Peru. And then I came back. I worked at another bike shop. I worked at a bicycle wholesaler. And then more recently, I was working with adults with autism, and so this was kind of my escape. It's a pretty tough gig working just any sort of service like that, and this was kind of my little bit of it was something that I enjoyed doing to kind of um, keep my sanity myself. And it just kind of it's turned now into a profession. It's still a pretty low lying profession. I was able to save up quite a bit over the last few years, so I have about a year of finances to kind of make it work. But yeah, I'm hoping, and I make a lot of different kinds of wallets out of old bicycle inner tubes. So I thought that was kind of cool, bicycle powered, making things out of old things that were on bikes.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that. I've delved into like what's it called? Kiteboarding and those
Yeah,
kites, like when you run them down, what's that called? It's not Dacron, it's called I forget what
that
the fat.
material's awesome and
Yeah,
super colorful and just perfect for sewing into stuff.
exactly. You can make like a bunch of different stuff with it, and it's not like you're ever going to use this for like if it gets holes and stuff like that. It's trash
It's
unless
done.
you
Yeah.
unless you can make like a nice prom dress out. Like it's so colorful that you could do whatever you want with it after, and it's not like
Yeah.
somebody's going to throw a stink or anything like that.
No, I
Um,
think they look cool.
yeah. And then I saw the what else did you do? The cart, like the cliche if anybody I mean everyone's seen some type of like Looney Tunes or I feel like it's a Wile E. Coyote thing with the
Yeah.
railroad cart. What's the official
Oh,
name for that again? Like
I
the
think they call them rail bikes.
Okay.
Right, that one that you're talking about. Yeah, I have no idea, but the one that goes up and down,
Yeah.
and that two dudes are pushing up and down, and they're
Yes,
flying down the rails.
exactly.
Yeah, my wife and I, we celebrate our 14th wedding anniversary, and she was cool enough, and she's like, "What?" It's something that we had both been interested in, so it was also in Pennsylvania, and they have these rail bikes that, all the drive stuff is bike stuff, and then it has a few railroad type wheels on them, and it was a blast. We had a lot of fun.
That sounds awesome. Is that did you say that was in Pennsylvania or West Virginia?
Yeah, that one's in Pennsylvania, but they're
Okay.
all over. I think there's one in West Virginia as well. The one that we went to is kind of in the central eastern part of Pennsylvania, but they have them all around. They're a lot of fun. You can rent them for like between $80 and $150 depending on the outfit, and it's a blast. We went with two, but there were other cars that had four, so pretty family friendly, and
That's
it,
nice. It's
it's a
definitely
lot of fun.
awesome. It's on my list of things that I never thought I wanted to do, and then it's like in the back of my head. Uh, so when you were coming up with your, I got to think of the name every time. Uh,
I call the one a schwinger, and then
the
I call the
stringer.
other
That's it.
ones are so cycles.
Okay. When you came up with I would imagine that you had to. There was like that in between with too much torque and not enough torque.
Mm,
Was that? Did you have any
yeah.
funny stories where you accidentally just like totally wrecked
Oh
everything?
yeah. Well, yeah. So I started, had no idea what I was doing, and I was like a 2-to-1 ratio. That'd be pretty good. So for one revolution of the pedals, it's gonna move the the part of the sewing machine twice. And so I was like, that'll be perfect. 2 stitches for every cycle. And then that is really slow and a ton of torque. So it can go through just about anything, but you have to really spin to get that to happen. So yeah, I had to mess around a lot with the gears, and I don't understand the ratios and whatnot. I just changed the gears, and that's better or that's worse, and a lot of tinkering that's involved. But one time when I was doing that, I was still like, I had to really move my pedals. So I was really like focusing on making my feet go fast. And then like the thread broke. So I had to rethread it, and I just wasn't paying attention. And I put the needle through my finger, which, it's like the classic sewer thing. Everybody puts the needle through their finger just once. But the way that I did it, I was using my feet, and like my brain blanked. I'm like, oh, which way do I go to get the
Yeah, yeah,
needle out
yeah.
of my finger? And instead of getting the needle out, I panicked and I made the needle go further in. It
Uh,
was just a
yeah.
painful memory. But
It, the way you describe that is like I have a constant fear. I've never done this before, but I
good on you.
there's no, not that part, but like when I'm driving or I think about driving, like which one's the gas, which one's the brake. I don't know if you've ever done that before, where it's just like
Yeah.
maybe it's not even when I'm in the car. It's just like I don't know, just a
It's,
constant fear I have, like being late for a test or something.
oh, yeah. It's just like a little switch in your brain. And, it's pretty easy, left or right. And, we get those confused all the time. And yeah. Yeah. Sometimes when I don't think, it comes out better. And then when I think about it, I get confused.
Yeah. So with this ramping up, is there anything else you're working on and offshoot with that? Because I know I saw you man, I don't even know what the name of those are. The thing that goes around the chain that's attached to the spoke that you're
Oh,
making clocks out of those.
oh, cool. Yeah, you look back. Thanks. So yeah, I do the sewing. I've made a few of the sew cycles, and I kind of hope that's kind of my best way forward. But I also get a lot of bike parts. So the chain rings, those are called. So they're big. They're like 52 teeth, and I found that they work really well to make clocks. So yeah, I put a bunch of different things in the back. The ones that are the most popular seem to be, I take old license plates, and then I make that the clock face, and then I put the clock through, and then every once and again you can get a pendulum that goes. So I put a bicycle chain, and at the end of the bicycle chain I have a bicycle gear, and so it's like a pendulum that's a chain and a gear. And yeah,
I saw
they're
the
pretty
one you did
popular.
of DC. It looked really cool. I was like, oh, okay. Because I've
Well, thanks.
always, yeah. Because I'm originally from Maryland, So
Nice.
you know how like everyone from Maryland loves the Maryland flag, but everyone who's not from Maryland hates it with a passion.
Yeah. No,
But
so I went down to Maryland once with the Maryland flags, and I was like, well, I'll just cut out the flag part because it looks kind of silly. And then everybody from Maryland came up and went, dude, you cut out the whole cool part. You took out the flag. It's like, I had no idea.
yeah, well, you'll know better next time. But I love
Yeah.
DC's flag. I don't know why it doesn't get enough hype, even though it's so like simple. Uh,
Yeah. No, the DC plate's cool too. Somebody came up to me and said, I'd like to just, I was at a bicycle event and they said, I have some old DC plates from when I lived in DC. I want to remember my time. And so I was like, yeah, because it's weird with license plates. There's like this really interesting secondary gray market. And so, I find a lot of them at garage sales or, friends and family know that I like them. So if they see them when they're out and about at a sale, they'll grab them. But it means that I'm never going to find a Florida one, or rarely will I find a Florida or California because they're far away from me. So you can buy them online, and there's like some states cost more than others, and Maryland is one of the more expensive states because I think you have to maybe turn in your plates, or Maryland kind of guards their plates, whereas like California, those are really easy. There's a lot of California plates,
you
so
are
it's interesting.
you are 100% right because boring facts, but in Virginia, you have to pay property tax. So a lot of
Okay.
people who move from Maryland to Virginia, because you don't have to pay taxes on your cars in Maryland. So when you move to Maryland to Virginia, you have to start paying like, I don't know, like I have a Jeep and I pay like $400 a year on it, but it's an old Jeep. So if
Okay.
you have a newfangled car, you have to pay
The
like
cost.
$3,000. Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
snap.
However, what I learned is when you move from Maryland to Virginia, you have to send back in your plates. And if you
Yeah.
don't send in your plates, you have to, what is it? You have to make sure that you are covered by insurance between the gap period and all this stuff. And I was
Huh.
just freaking out because I had just thrown them away, like not even thinking. So at one point I was like, oh crap, what am I going to do? So I just bought new plates, like spanking new plates, and then I sent them back immediately.
Yeah.
And somehow I got away with it. And hopefully they don't listen to this.
Nice. Yeah, it's interesting. Different states must have similar things because there's probably like 5 states that are really hard to get, and the rest of them are pretty easy. New
Well,
Mexico has a really cool.
oh, it does. It has like a Native
It's like,
American totem, I think, on it or
yeah,
something like that.
and one version's teal and one version's yellow, but it's really hard to get a hold of. Like maybe they have something similar.
Yeah, I believe
Who
that.
knew? Yeah.
So where do you like what's your next big project, I guess, coming up?
Well, for this fall, I'm focusing on getting out to some like craft events and Christmas events. So I have 6 scheduled events in September, October, and November. Because I did a big redesign on all my wallets. So before I was lining them, either I wasn't lining them or I'd line them with old chicken feed bags, which I thought looked pretty cool. But I thought people would want some colored stuff. So like some really bright colors. I found some really nice like reinforced fabric that's made out of old plastic bottles. They recycle them. And it looks amazing, but I felt as though I had to get that in front of folks. So right now I'm pushing to get out to all those events, talk to people, just kind of see where their eyes go, what gels with them. And so that'll probably take up the majority of my fall. And then in the winter and in the spring, I hope to make all the wallets. So I make like a couple different versions, but most of them right now are kind of manly, like a bifold. It's kind of a classic dude wallet. So I hope to make some wallets that
Maybe some clutches.
yeah, like some clutches, or some people call ones envelope style, or just go out and go nuts on the design side. Because I get a lot of folks on Instagram that say, "Well, that's a really cool wallet." That's not my style. So go out on a branch and try those things, and then just see where it takes me from there. So I've made uh, 4 so cycles, 2 Schwingers that are Schwinn and the Singer, and one I just made that's mobile. So I'll go around to all the shows with this, and if people are really interested, it's a pretty easy concept, and I've developed a really easy keychain that people can sew out of inner tubes. So it'll be fun to watch people sew and interact with them.
That's awesome. So at the beginning of the interview, you mentioned like all these places you had traveled to with the Peace Corps with your wife and stuff like that. How do
Yeah.
you, it just seems like complete extremes because if I remember, you are completely off the grid right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we are.
But you go to all these like amazing, or you went to all these amazing places, and that's such like, how do you deal with such a contrast like that?
Well, yeah, there is a pretty big contrast, and then there's some similarities too. So in Zambia, I lived in a mud hut with a grass thatch roof, so
So
no
similar.
electricity. Yeah, so no running water, no electricity. The nearest running water was about 60 miles away. The nearest electricity was about the same, and so and it was also a very rural area, of course. So that's where it got in my head. I would like to try to live a similar lifestyle. It's just a little simpler, and I figured if I can do a lot of the stuff, then I can kind of keep my finances down, and then I can do ridiculous things like build sew cycles and not have to worry about finances for a year or so. So when we got home after the last time, we were going to grow up and be big kids. And so we decided to build a house. And I had built like a small cabin that I lived in for a little bit, and that was also off grid, but it was,
You
you know,
make
it was
that
pretty.
sound like a hobby, like, oh,
It kind of was.
I built a cabin. It's a hobby cabin.
Yeah, it's like yes, I lived in it, but it gave me the confidence. I was like, I can probably do a real house. And so our house is 20 feet by 20 feet, so it's relatively small. I think we have 600 feet that are, considered living area. Um, yeah, so it's actually a really nice version of like what we lived in when we were in the Peace Corps. So there is that similarity, but we live kind of rurally here, and well, we live near Harrisburg, but we lived in the middle of several fields. So yeah, there's some similarities there, and then it's different world. But coming from out of college, one thing that a lot of people had said, when you get older, when you have kids, when you have a house, when you have all these responsibilities, it'll be really hard to travel and do all these other things. So do them while you're young. So that's why we got out when we were younger, and we didn't have a house, didn't have anything, and we could just kind of cut. And so we lived outside the United States. I probably lived outside the States a total of close to 10 years. And then, we've been back for about 10 years.
I guess the way you deal with that now, you're obviously trying to expand your business like through Instagram,
Yeah.
and I don't even know if you're on TikTok or not, but like, how do you do that while still being like off the grid? Because you're trying to expand your business,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
obviously it seems like a paradox.
Yeah. It's a weird dichotomy because more or less I'm a hermit. I just stay down in my basement.
More or less,
And
I'd
yeah,
like
more
to.
or less, living my best life. And, I leave to go places every once and again, but I mainly get around by bicycle. So I'm pretty limited, and seeing that I live in a rural area that, yeah, we're 10 miles from anything. That's a 20-mile round trip bike trip. So I don't make it all that often. So it is kind of weird that I kind of live, away from most things, but I am trying to grow things. So, a lot of it is electronically, and Instagram's a really good one. I tried TikTok. It wasn't my thing, although it's almost the same as Instagram. So yeah, I'm trying to push things out, and mainly I'll do that. We have T-Mobile they have these little towers that go off the cell signals. So we can get Wi-Fi in our house. We are off grid, but we do have 6 solar panels, and we have a battery bank so that when the sun is not shining, we can still have electricity at night. Like now, the sun's not shining, but we have electricity all night.
Have you ever
So
thought of getting a gravity battery? Do you know what those are?
no, what's that?
I don't know if they have them small scale, but China is trying to roll out these gravity batteries because I don't know if everyone knows this. I feel like everyone thinks just solar works and gives energy, but a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
don't know that like you basically have to use a lot of the energy gets lost just because
Yeah,
like during the day you can only charge the batteries so much. However,
definitely.
with the gravity battery, this is hugely like prehistoric, but we haven't really found anything yet. But basically, they will bring up weight. Like there's these little it's not electrical or
Uh,
anything, but it's like
yeah,
kinetic energy. It's like
yeah,
the Swedes, I think they bring water up the mountain and they use all
right.
that like water during the day. And then at the night, they bring the water down, like damming it or
Yeah,
using the water coming down to kind of, what's
right.
that called? A water wheel, mill
Yeah,
type deal.
yeah. No, that
And
makes sense.
and so you should definitely look this up. They've got, I don't know, even I know you can compare it to. It looks um like a New York, like somebody's trying to build it and it's only got the I beams. But what they have is like they're bringing up these blocks all the way up. And so, like,
Uh-huh.
whenever they need the energy, they'll drop the weight. And I guess they're
Yeah.
using some type of, I don't know what the conversion of the like gravity drop on that is, but I thought it was just crazy because it's like so advanced, but so basic at the same time. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
that happens all the time because a lot of grid systems now, a lot of solar systems are connected to the grid. So the grid is basically your battery bank. So if you produce a lot of energy during the day or during the summer, then it banks that electricity theoretically in the grid, and then you get it back like in at night or more specifically in the wintertime. But we're not connected to the grid. And so we lose out on a lot of electricity during the day because our batteries will be full. If it's a sunnyish day, sunnyish day, sunnyish day, well, then we've filled up the batteries by 1 o'clock in the afternoon and we have, 4 to 7 hours of potential that we're missing out on. And we've thought about it a lot because batteries are the most expensive part of the system by far. Um, and so we've always thought, how can we store more energy? So we came up with ridiculous things that we didn't do, like just have a bunch of little DeWalt batteries because I use a lot of power, that kind of power tools, or you have a big air uh, compressed air tank because you can run a lot of stuff off of that. But having a gravity system, that's a good idea.
It it's good, but then I don't know. It's just crazy. You know what I mean? Like then you got to get these blocks and then bring. Doesn't it seem like so? I don't know. Like you've got to look at the photo of what like it's just bringing it
Uh,
up. I don't know,
I'll
but
definitely check that out. Some other people have suggested, well, if you really like bikes, you could power some of your batteries by, turning the bicycle power into the watts that would go into the batteries. But it turns out we as humans don't make nearly as much
no, no.
electricity as what you'd think. So,
Do you watch much? I used to watch a lot of TV, but when you
mhm.
brought up the bike and the electricity thing, it reminded me of there's this episode of what's that show? It's like the new Twilight Zone. Black
Okay.
Mirror. Black Mirror.
I haven't seen it.
So the premise of the show is it's like some dystopia and basically people and I think they're in one giant building. They don't really explain it much. It's more like a 1 hour thing. But basically
Gotcha.
people are just cycling like all day and they earn points, which they
Uh-huh.
can buy food with, they can buy like everything, and they just do that every day.
Huh.
And I'm just thinking because they show you like tons of people cycling at the same time too, like in futuristic suits and futuristic bikes, and they've got like
Gotcha.
virtual reality in front of you. You can choose where you're biking, but it just makes me think of that just because they're probably it's a nicer version of the Matrix where they're just hooking them up to make batteries. Um,
Sounds kind of nice. I'm a big fan of YouTube, and there is a YouTube video out there where there's a track cyclist from Germany, which they're kind of like the sprinters of the cycling world. So they have these huge thighs and just huge legs, and they're like, more or less muscle builders and or bodybuilders rather. And there's a guy that's powering a toaster, and he's this big, bulky track cyclist, and he's going all in, like just the sweat's just pouring off of him, all to power one little toaster. So yeah, it's
yeah,
it's funny what some things consume electrically a
it's
lot.
like I don't know. You can name like any 1980s movies, but you know how like they have it hooked up, the light on the front of the bike, they have it
Yeah,
hooked up to, and they're just really cranking it. And I don't
yeah.
know, just to date myself, my dad used to buy me these crank crank lights, and you just really had to go to town on it to really like.
You have to rip. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Like the conversion is not worth it. At least
No.
where we're at right now.
So the new technology is they have that into the hub rather than the old ones they rubbed against your tire.
Mhm.
So now it's in the hub, and with LED technology, it actually works really well now. You can get a really bright light without going very fast. But yeah, back in the old days, you had to be going like really fast at night to see where you're going, which was kind of a
That
paradox.
that is nice.
Yeah.
However, from what I've seen, the comparison on brightness though, like because like for example, I try to use, I mean, just like everyone nowadays, LEDs all over my house,
Yeah.
and I bought like like Philips light bulb, like smart version too, just to make my life a lot easier. And the
Sure.
thing is, I had to buy a specific light bulb to get an equivalent lumens for like a standard 100 watt. My wife, I don't know
Yeah.
if your wife is like this or any of your friends, that she likes the kitchen to be as bright as a surgery room. Like she doesn't want to, like she needs to know every nook and cranny where everything is, like if there's ants
Yeah.
anywhere. So
No,
like I
that
had to find something equivalent.
yeah, no, my in-laws are they like a bright kitchen. Luckily, Katie's pretty at times our house can be a bit dim, but yeah, it's interesting with the different lumens and whatnot.
So let's let's go a little bit further. You're, I don't know, at 20 years down the line,
Ooh.
what do you hope this is progressed? Do you see yourself doing something else? Like when I first started talking to you, I was like, this man looks like he's about to buy a CNC router, not a large one, just like maybe like a
Sure.
4x4, and like
Yeah.
try to expand stuff, like incorporate. And then the other weird thing, one thing I love is the drinking bicycle tours, and they're only done in
Oh
select
yeah.
cities. I've done
Yeah.
it in Austin, and I know they have it in Nashville. I don't think it's legal many other places.
Like one of those ones where you maybe have 8 or 10 people on a big,
And you
like
can
kind of
drink
moving bar.
on it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I've never done one. We don't have any near me, but that's on my bucket list.
I recommend it. But like what are some things you're reaching at?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe I hadn't thought that far, but thinking about it now, so one of the things that influenced me a lot while I was abroad, especially Zambia and Peru, was people's businesses where they were often limited by their real estate. So, it's expensive to have a larger place. So a lot of these places would have really small tuck shops or tiendas that, it's just one person in there, and then they just stuff the whole like a hole in the wall, basically just stuff it full of one specific thing, like, oh, I sell shoes, so just all shoes in there. Or me specifically, I like to go check out the bike parts, and just like there's one person that can fit in there, nobody else can get in, and they have just all this stuff. And so I my wife and I kind of made a pact, we wouldn't make the house bigger than what it is. And so what I can do with my business is basically in our basement, which was an afterthought, and it's a little smaller.
You have a basement?
Yeah, so Pennsylvania, it makes the most. It's totally an afterthought. I was like, when I was building the house, I'm like, well, the easiest way for me to build a house is put things on piers, because I know how to dig a hole and I know how to put cement in the hole. I'll just put it on piers. And then my wife was like, "You're just being an idiot. Everybody else has a small basement underneath their house. That's what totally makes sense." I was like, I don't.
Did you
It's
do
totally an
that before or
afterthought.
after you built the house?
Before, so
Oh
we
man,
built
I
the
was
found.
about to say, like building
That'd
a
be
base,
crazy.
that would be like, I don't know if you've seen The Great Escape, but just like scooping dirt, like slowly bringing it out of the house.
There are people that have expanded their basements by doing that exact thing,
Oh,
and it's ridiculous.
it is ridiculous because my first thought is cave in, which is a crazy
Oh
thought,
yeah.
but like it's probably happened before.
Oh,
Sorry, keep
definitely.
going though.
No, anyway, so my idea is to expand to just completely. So basically, I can just fit in my basement, but then I got all the stuff that I like, all the different inner tube
All those
wallets,
batteries.
or all the batteries. Exactly.
I
Maybe
bet
the
you have at
gravity
least
system.
6 DeWalt batteries at
Yeah,
that.
I got a bunch. And just like continue to find space down there and see where it takes me, so that I can be packed. Oh, there's our dogs. Be packed in there, just like I saw those guys in the, because for whatever reason, it just really gelled with me. So that's my 20-year plan. Pack my basement, kind of become a pack rat, stick to the hermit life. Should be great.
I like that, except for it's just like I can't deal with clutter. My brain is just like everything needs to have a spot. Like I'll have my creative spurts where it's like completely messy and then I have to block everything to clean. Like I'll make piles, like this will go over there, 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 and then I'm done and I move the piles to where they need to go. But like I just can't focus. It's just my brain is not wired correctly.
No, it's interesting. My wife is very much, so she gets to control the first floor. We have the main floor, and then we have like a little loft area. And so she gets both those, and she makes everything orderly and it looks beautiful. She's a massage therapist. So we've packed a lot into our little house. We have a little massage studio in our house. So people have to come through our house to get to the massage studio. So she has everything perfectly dialed. And then you go down in my basement, it looks like a bomb's gone off. And like I yo-yo between I'm getting organized and then I want to make this thing and it throws everything into chaos. And then I get organized and then I make something else. Like when I'm making a new sew cycle and I don't know how to do it, my brain just goes into chaos mode. So there's a dichotomy in our house.
But yeah, you probably have the same train of thought as me where I'm like I sadly have like 8 projects that I'm currently working on. And it's just like I slowly start to bring scraps together for each of those. Like, and it sounds like a hoarder because I'm like, oh, I need those shirts. I'm using those shirts to resize for my children. Or like, what else do I've got? I'm trying to do my drip irrigation. I need those plastic tubes. Like,
no doubt. Or like that just looks really valuable and you might use it in the future. So then you stick it somewhere and then 10 years later you use it. And then the hoarding brain's been, reinforced.
Rewarded. Like, that's the worst thing. And I've said it many times on this podcast, both of my parents, they're not, there's hoarding and then there's just like I
there's
can
levels.
stuff it all in the like back 5 rooms that nobody will see type deal. And you can just go it's like what's that called? Alcoholics, functional hoarders. That's what I'm going to term it. Functional hoarders. They're not saving pizza boxes or newspapers, but they're a couple steps below it.
There's levels. And for living in a small home, I'm climbing the ladder right now. I think it's still in the functional hoarder stage, but like I said, someday I'm just going to have like these little trails down in the basement and everything's just, it's going to be.
I'm surprised you don't have it like a shed, like a work.
Well, full disclosure, we got a small shipping container, and so we just.
Are we talking like the cool industrial ones? Like they're taking off the.
Yeah.
Oh, those are cool.
Yeah, off the ships.
I want to make a house out of those.
Yeah, those are awesome. So we hope to someday make it into kind of a she shed. So my wife and I, but mainly my wife, has a really big garden and we have chickens and we have quails and we got a lot of stuff going out there. And so the idea was we'd put the shipping container right behind the garden and then we'd blow out the rear garden. And so that would become integrated into it. But then I became a hoarder and I just threw all my junk in there. So someday we hope to make that into a really cool little place. Because when you take a shipping container and make it into like a cool shed or a cool house.
Do you know how to weld? Like TIG or MIG?
So my father-in-law is nice enough. He has a TIG welder. And so he's helped me TIG weld a few things. So I can kind of make something functional.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Make that into a little, you could even put a little nice roof on there. I don't know about coating on that.
Well, my wife really likes living roofs. And so she's really into the idea of putting on top the shipping container a living roof. So I've looked into it. It's possible. So we'll see what happens.
So right before our final question, I'm not even trying to plug it just because I just recorded like this great woman. She's in Denver and she does urban farming, like, but it's
Oh
all
yeah,
like all of it's going to the homeless, but she like
nice.
has companies and other people approach her like, hey, I've got like land and all, not like large land, but like,
Right,
like half an acre or like a quarter of an acre. So they plan on it. And just like you, she bikes everywhere and like just gives
nice.
out like this like free food. And she said that I think she gave out 7,000 pounds of food last year. It's called The
Wow.
Table. You should, well, you can
I'll
listen to the
check it out.
podcast or look at the links. It's definitely, I was like, that's awesome. That's just like, I'm a big functional fixedness person where I see multiple use. Well, I don't need to tell you that, but I see like, I see something and I'm like, what can I do with that? Like, I see this Gatorade bottle. I'm like, avocado seed, 4 toothpicks. I've
There's
got a little
potential
science.
there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Last question.
Okay.
What is something that your parents did that you'd like to pass on to a next generation? And what is something new you'd like to try or something that you'd kind of steer away from that they did?
Yeah. So it kind of is, it's on another gear. Something that my parents did when I was in high school was they talked about finances. And I find a lot of families don't talk about finances with their kids. And what they did is they said, all right, we have put aside a little bit of money for you to go to college. It would be enough for a semester if you go to a really fancy private school, or it would be enough for maybe a year or two if you go to another university. But if you get scholarships, then you might be able to, help with that and not come out with a lot of debt. And that was back in the late 90s when schools were really starting to ramp up the cost of it. And it was something that, I, as a stupid kid, I was not thinking of at all. But that seed in my brain helped me to get out of college. I was able, I focused when I was in high school so I could get some scholarships, but also I knew, well, I have this set amount and it won't be more. This is what I can go to college for. And if I want to come out debt free, then, I have to figure this out. And that really has helped set me up to be more fiscally responsible than what I think I would have been without that. And, I have, there's a lot of friends that either maybe their family wasn't in a position, or maybe the family was pretty well off and they never talked about finances with their kids. And those kids really struggled through college. They maybe came out with a large debt, and that changes your trajectory. And I don't think I would have been able to do a lot of the things that I did without having that just initial thought when I was young of financial responsibility, which is just kind of a weird thing that I haven't talked about, but it has made a huge impact in my life. And then something, I call my little business crank therapy because it's kind of funny, but also, the bicycle has helped me to weather a lot of, valleys in my life. Getting outside, being active. And I really want to pass that on because, mental health is a big deal and it can be really tricky. And so I think doing everything you can to give yourself a leg up is important, like getting outside and being active, you know, eating a little bit healthier, getting decent sleep, staying away from some stuff that might mess with you. Yeah. And I think it's not going to solve everything, but at least in my life, the times that have been really dark, the thing that has really helped me out, family, friends, counseling, but also getting outside, being active, eating a little bit healthier, getting good sleep, and just kind of hitting the basics will do a lot for you. And so if I could pass that on to the next generation, I think that's what I like to pass on.
I like that. The basics.
Yeah.
It's good.
Hit the basics.
Because what was, I was looking at something and they were just saying that Americans are just like, I don't know if this makes sense, but putting a band-aid over a band-aid over a band-aid. Like for example, I can't go to sleep. Let me take some melatonin.
Yeah.
I'm low on vitamin D. Let me go take
Yeah.
like vitamins for it. And I'm like, that makes
It's
complete sense to me. And
right.
it's
It's
just,
it's hard
sorry, keep
because a
going.
lot of these things you have to do, like if you're in the depths of whatever you're in, then that's not the time to really start these new habits. Or it can be, but
It's like
there's
short
like
term over long term like changes.
exactly. So if you can get have these habits and rituals and get that in, so you have a daily um, you know positive way of looking at things, or, you know, a daily exercise routine, or, you know, you just try to stay towards the healthier stuff, then when you're in the depths, you can kind of rely on that. So, but it's hard because it won't take effect as quickly as probably some of those other Band-Aids will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for being on the show, sir. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have some fun.
Michael, thanks. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And I guess have a good night. This is actually probably the closest time zone, or obviously we're the same time zone, that I have been in a while.
Yeah, I listened to some of your earlier podcasts. The gentleman from Ireland that was talking about the 4-day work week. That was I found that to be really interesting, but he was in a completely different time zone as well.
Yeah, he worked in the New Zealand time zone, but was actually living in Ireland, which I thought was very confusing to me.
Blew my mind as well.
But I do like the idea of a 4-day work week. That's like huge for me. We just had a 4-day. Well, I don't know if we had the Labor Day just now, and it was like,
yeah, right.
My wife gets off the Friday because she starts school early, like before Labor Day. So they give her the Friday before Labor Day. So it's like a 4-day week. And it was just like,
nice.
Obviously we didn't relax. We just did all these projects that we wanted to get done.
But they're your projects, and that makes a big difference.
That's true.
Yeah.
But thanks again, and have a good night.
Yeah, Michael, thank you. Have a great night. Appreciate talking.
If you like this week's episode of People More Interesting Than Me, please follow me on Apple Podcasts so you won't miss out on more episodes like these.